It's been a wild couple of months, not just in gaming, though we'll definitely get there, but in life. I became a dad. And let me tell you, no game tutorial has ever prepared me for the difficulty curve. There's no map, no quest markers, and sleep is a rare collectible. But even though the late night diaper changes, the bottle warm-ups, and those magical moments where the world just pauses, I found time in-game, somehow part therapy, part escape, part reclaiming a bit of myself in between lullabies. Although I can't say I really know any of them, but I definitely sang a couple of songs for the newborn. Now, this isn't going to be one of those dad gamer sob stories. Okay, maybe a little, but mostly this is just me sharing what I've actually played these past few months. What stuck with me, what disappointed me, and what reminded me why I love games in the first place. If you've been struggling with your backlog, balancing real life with your passion for gaming, or just wondering what the heck happened in reverse, then you're in the right place. Grab a drink, toss on some headphones, and let's talk games. Starting with something that is as pretty as it's puzzling. Trine 3. Without further ado, let's get into the intro. Alright, so let's talk about Trine 3, the Artifact of Power. A game that feels that the visual equivalent of sipping a warm cup of fairy tale, but then realizing someone's forgot to add the actual tea. I've always had a soft spot for the Trine series. The first two games were these beautiful crafted side-scrolling puzzle platformers that felt like interactive storybooks. You had three distinct heroes: Amadeus, the wizard, Pontius, the knight, and Zoya the thief, each with unique abilities that complemented each other in these clever environmental puzzles and whimsical combat segments. And up to Trine 2, the formula worked. It worked really well. Then Trine 3 came along and said, hey, what if we made this game 3D? Visually, that's a reasoning yes. The environments in Trine 3 are straight up jaw-dropping. Everything from the glowing forest floors to the golden sunset dripping over ruined towers looking like concept art came to life. It's a masterclass in color and atmosphere. You could take a screenshot at every moment and hang it in your wall. The soundtrack, ethereal, enchanting, totally in tune with that fairy tale tone in the series is known for. But here's where the magic cracks. The shift from 3D doesn't quite land. By moving from 2.5D to fully 3D gameplay, Frozen Byte essentially broke the tie. Puzzle-focused pacing that made the previous entries so enjoyable. Characters' controls feel floaty, especially Amadeus, who now has to manipulate objects in a 3D space with physics that feel more rubber band than wizardly precise. And then there's Pontius, who occasionally decides that he had enough of gravity and just slides off platforms like butter on a skillet. And let's be honest, he doesn't seem like a very light guy. Combat becomes clunkier, more awkward, and the cameras, while cinematic, sometimes prioritizes the view over functionality, making depth perceptions and problem during precision platforming. What stings the most though is the abrupt ending. The game just stops, like mid-story. There's a build-up, mystery, intrigue, and then suddenly the credits roll and you're left going like, wait, that's it? It turns out that the game was cut off short due to budget constraints and development changes with the 3D engine. And you can feel it. There's a real sense that this was meant to be an act 1 of a much larger game, but instead we got a beautiful, incomplete slice of something ambitious but half-baked. That being said, it's not a bad game, it's just frustrating, especially if you're coming off of the polish and charm of Trine 2. There's still moments of brilliance, particularly when puzzles actually click and all the three characters work together like well-oiled fantasy machine. The co-op as well adds some chaotic joy, especially if you're playing with friends who are more into launching each other off cliffs than solving puzzles efficiently. But ultimately, Trine 3 feels like a risky experiment that didn't quite pan out. Shutdown, a visual masterpiece trapped inside a gameplay misstep. If you're a fan of the series, it's worth playing, just to see what they tried, but go in with tempered expectations. And maybe keep Trine 4 ready on the deck, because thankfully they listened and they course corrected. Now this is the Trine I remember falling in love with. Trine 4, the Nightmare Prince, is that heartfelt apology from a friend who messed up but came back with flowers, a handwritten note, and a tray of your favorite snacks. After the lukewarm experiment in Trine 3, Frostbite clearly took a long, hard look in the mirror and said, let's get back to what made Trine great again. That does sound like Trump, but believe me, they actually did it. And they did, in almost every way. First off, the game ditched the full 3D approach and returned to the tried and true 2.5D style. And honestly, it's like coming back home. Platforming feels tighter, the puzzles are clear, the character controls like they're supposed to, with less jank and more of that smooth, deliberate movement that made the early games so enjoyable. Each hero once again brings their own flavor to the adventure. Amadeus is still levitating boxes and conjuring platforms, and this time his toolkit feels even more responsive. Zoya gets some new tricks, like elemental arrows and neat rope tether mechanics that adds a whole new layer to the puzzle design. Pontius, bless his brave heart, still charges through enemies and smacks them down, breaking walls. But now he can also reflect light with his shield and solve more puzzle-focused scenarios. Big brain, knight energy. The story this time centers around a runaway prince, Prince Silos, whose nightmares are leaking into the real world and causing all sorts of magical chaos. It's not groundbreaking stuff narratively, but it works. It adds just enough shake to keep things moving, and more importantly, creates a reason for some absolutely gorgeous level design. Each area feels like a painting in motion. Autumn forests, moonlight castles, frosty ruins, dreamlike pocket dimensions. You don't just play Trine 4, you soak in it. But what really makes this game click is how balances challenge and creativity. Puzzles are no longer rigid in their solution. There's usually more than one way to go through them, depending on how you see each character's abilities. You might swing across a gap with Zoya, or levitate a plank with Amadeus, or even stack objects in a ridiculous way, totally not intended way to somehow, but it works. And the game doesn't punish you for it. It rewards creativity, problem solving, which makes solo play deeply satisfying and co-op an absolute blast. Combat is still the weakest part of the series overall. The Trine 4 doesn't fully fix that. It's functional, but it's a bit repetitive. You fight shadow creatures now, manifestations of nightmare energy, and while they look cool, the fight can feel like a brief interruption rather than an exciting encounter. And besides, they're all scattered to some areas of the levels that are pretty much predictable. You will know exactly when you're going in a fight section because they are so weirdly placed out. Still, they spaced out well and never overstayed their welcome. The real victory here is pacing. Trine 4 knows what it is. It's a cozy, whimsical puzzle platformer with enough energy, just enough action, and a whole lot of charm. It's not trying to reinvent the wheel, it's polishing the ones it already built. And for me, it was an excellent kind of game I needed during those chaotic months. Something beautiful, something smart, something comforting. Trine 4 is Frostbite's return to form, not with flash, but with confidence. It's not just a course correction, it's a love letter to the fans who stuck with the series, and a perfect example of how listening to the feedback can lead to a better game. Just to make a quick pause, I would just like to apologize for any background noise. In the past, I used to have only Zira and Lorelai making all this noise, but now we also have Armea, so if you ever hear any babies or weird noises, well, now you know. The next game that we'll be talking about is a game that both me and my wife played and enjoyed. Well, kind of. You'll be hearing out more about this one from a person that has been on this channel a while back, and you haven't heard her in quite some time. So I'll be letting Armea to take over to talk about Resident Evil Reverse. And since we both had similar experiences with this game, I'm pretty confident that she'll be doing a great great time explaining what this game was all about. Although, keep in mind that she'll be using some of the things that I have experienced, but she will be sharing them in her own way.
It's one of those games where the real horror isn't the monster. It's wondering why it exists. This was Capcom's big multiplayer experiment bundled originally with Resident Evil Village as a bonus. The idea? Take iconic characters from across the Resident Evil universe, throw them into a deathmatch arena and let them fight it out in short chaotic rounds. Sounds fun on paper, right? You get to play as Leon, Jill, Ada, Chris, basically a fun service buffet with a PvP twist. But in practice, it's rough. Like cold leftovers microwaved in a paper towel kind of rough. Let us start with the basics. Matches are 6-player free-for-all. You pick your character, run around one of several small maps, grab weapons and virus samples, and try to rack up kills. When you die, you mutate into a bioweapon, Nemesis, Jack Baker, Tyrant, and etc. and get a shot at revenge. Once you burn through your bioweapon life, you respawn as your original character and repeat the loop. It is a neat gimmick the first few times. There's a certain novelty to dying as Claire Redfield and coming back as a Hawking monster to smash your rival into paste. But that novelty fades quickly. The biggest problem, it just doesn't feel good to play. The gunplay is floaty, movement is awkward, the maps are cramped and lack any real personality, and worst of all, it's an incredibly imbalanced experience. Some characters have clearly better damage output or survivability, while others feel like walking targets. Combine that with lag issues, questionable hit detection, and a camera that doesn't quite pop in tight spaces, and you've got a recipe for frustration. Visually, it is a mixed bag. The character models looks good, and they are using re-engine assets after all, but animations are stiff, environments are bland, and the UI feels like an afterthought. It is functional but not stylish or immersive. And to be honest, why Vasheral played this game recently, it's because the servers are shutting down. At the time this video was recorded, when the servers were already in a pretty bad state, matchmaking was borderline broken, the connection quality was all over the place, and the entire experience felt like a ticking clock. So Vasheral figured that he should at least knock out the achievements before this whole thing disappears forever. Luckily, he didn't go through it alone. A huge thanks to Telplay Discord community. A few of you jumped in and helped him grind out those wins. And we appreciate you more than you know. You know who you are. Well, I know who you are. That said, if you are a Resident Evil super fan, there is some joy in seeing these characters duke it out in such a ridiculous setting. There were moments, fleeting ones, where he laughed out loud, clearly because I was next to him, from the sheer chaos, like blowing up Leon with a rocket, dying instantly, and coming back as a moldy monster, flailing through a crowd. But those moments are few and far between. Most of the time, he either getting spawn camped, dying to lag, or wondering why you are not just replaying Resident Evil 4 Remake instead. To be brutally honest, Resident Evil Reverse is a forgettable side dish in a franchise full of main course masterpieces. It feels like it belongs in a bonus disc from 2004, not in the modern multiplayer arena. Capcom's capable of greatness, but this one's better left in the lab. Dear Esther is less of a game and more of a mood, a slow, melancholic descent into a fractured narrative told across the wind-blasted cliffs of a lonely island. It's a walking simulator in the purest sense. No enemies, no puzzles, no objectives, just you, the environment, and a voice whispering fragmented memories into your ear. And for Vash, this was one of those backlog games that sat untouched for years because he kept asking himself, am I really in the mood for something like this? Turns out one quiet evening he was, and he's glad he gave it a chance. Right from the start, Dear Esther sets a tone of isolation. You are dropped onto a bleak Hebridean island, no prompts, no HUD, nothing but the howling wind and distant cries of seagulls. As you walk slowly, the narrator begins to speak. He reads letters to a woman named Esther. These monologues are poetic, jointed, often abstract, and full of pain. There are references to guilt, loss, a car crash, infection, spirituality, and ghosts, both literal and metaphorical. But here's the thing, nothing is told directly. The story is a jigsaw puzzle levels scattered across the island, and depending on how you explore and which version of the narration you get. Because it actually randomizes some lines between playthroughs, you might walk away with a slightly different interpretation than someone else. Is it a man grieving the loss of his wife in a drunk driving accident? Is it a descent into madness, a metaphor for death and purgatory? Yes, no, and maybe. It is intentionally opaque, and that's part of its allure or frustration depending on who you are. Visually, the game holds up surprisingly well despite its age. Cave sequences in particular are gorgeous, bioluminescent, hunting almost alien. There's a dreamlike painterly quality to the whole world. And even when it's just wind-carved rock and decaying buildings, the sound design is a standout, waves crashing against the cliffside, the crunch of gravel beneath your feet, and that ambient sorrowful soundtrack composed by Jessica Curry. Honestly, the music alone is worth experiencing. It carries a lot of the emotional weight. Now we know a game like this isn't for everyone. It is extremely slow. There's no sprint button, no jump, no interaction beyond walking and looking. If you are the kind of player who needs mechanical engagement, Dear Esther will test your patience. But if you are in the right headspace, if you just want to feel something quiet and reflective, it is powerful. It wasn't a long game, took around 90 minutes, but definitely the short journey lingered on Vasharal's mind for days afterward. He found himself thinking about the meaning of certain lines, replaying the audio in his head, and just appreciating how minimalism, when done well, can still hit just as hard as a big bombastic narrative. We wouldn't say it is an experience I'll return to often, but as one-time sit down, it was like opening a sad, dusty letter from someone you never met, but somehow still understanding exactly what they meant.
Estranged Act 1 is one of those pleasant little surprises that just appears in your backlog one day. Maybe you grabbed it because it was free, maybe you heard about it passing, maybe it's just been sitting there in your Steam list with that ambitious title that you always scroll past thinking, what even is this again? Well, now I can tell you. It's a short, first-person, narrative-driven experience built on the Source engine. Yes, that Source engine that also Dear Esther was built. And it feels like a love letter to the old-school modding culture. Back when developers were just excited to make things and tell stories even on limited budgets. The premise is pretty straightforward. You're a lone fisherman whose boat crashes during a storm and you wash up on a strange island. From there, you start uncovering signs of mysterious corporations, environmental collapse, and a local population that's been, let's say, heavily altered. The game slowly shifts from mystery to light horror to action with a few puzzle elements sprinkled in. And for something that was originally a Half-Life 2 mod, it's surprisingly solid. Visually, yeah, it looks dated, but charming so. There's very specific 2008 PC game energy here. Blocky architecture, overly shiny floors, and that unmistakable Source engine lighting. But there's also care and atmosphere in every space, where you're exploring abandoned houses, underground tunnels, or high security research facilities. There's a real sense of progression. The world built is subtle but effective. You piece things together from old notes, scattered terminals, and a brief interactions with survivors. And speaking of survivors, yes, there's a light voice acting. Is it amazing? Not really, but it works. It gives those worlds texture. Everyone you meet has this eerie, slight off vibe, like they've been alone a little too long, and it actually adds to the atmosphere. Gameplay wise, you're getting the full Source experience. Decent movement, simple physics puzzles, a trusty hammer, because of course, and the firearms that feel like they were built in the gravy well of Half-Life DNA. You're not moving down waves of enemies, but there is combat. Zombies, gunmen, a few tense moments. It's enough to keep you on edge without even feeling overwhelmed. The game doesn't overstay its welcome either, clocking in at 1 hour and a half, maybe 2, and Estranged Act 1 knows exactly what kind of experience it wants to deliver. It builds intrigue, gives you some atmospheric exploration, and a light combat that that bows out before it gets repetitive. But the real reason I appreciated this game, it feels genuine, passionate, made by someone who wanted to tell a story even if it didn't have that AAA budget or cutting edge tech. There's a sincerity here that you don't always get with more polished indie games. Is it groundbreaking? No. Is it must play? Not really, but it's worth your time if you enjoy atmospheric first-person storytelling in the vein of Half-Life or Gone Home with a little spook factor. So I would say absolutely. It was the kind of experience that reminded me why I love digging through my backlog in the first place. Sometimes they're quite little gem hiding under all the hype, just waiting to tell you a story you didn't know you needed. Werewolf, The Apocalypse, Earthblood, it's a game I went into really wanting to like. I mean it, come on, the elevator pitch alone sounds awesome. You're a shape-shifting, eco-terrorist werewolf fighting an evil corporation destroying the planet. It's part of the World of Darkness universe, which means lore-rich, grim-dark, supernatural storytelling and a chance to absolutely unleash in a brutal, primal way. But instead of walking away feeling like a powerful spirit of vengeance, I mostly felt, well, kinda bored and a little sad for the missed potential. You play as Kahal, a broody werewolf with a permanent skull and a deep love for Mother Earth. After a tragic loss, he exits himself from the pack, only to return 5 years later to fight the megacorp Endron. Basically, this universe version of Wayland Yutani meets the oil company. The story is full of melodrama, conspiracy, and spiritual jargon, but told with such a stiffness that it ended up feeling like a straight-to-DVD action movie from 2007. Let's talk gameplay, because this is where things should shine, as Kahal has 3 forms: human for stealth, hacking, and dialogue, wolf for silent movement and sneaking, and Krynos, the big hulking werewolf form you shift into for combat. The last one should be incredible. You're 9 feet tall, full fur-covered furry with claws that rip enemies apart. And for the first few fights, it's actually fun. Tearing through guards, ragdolling bodies across rooms, limbs flying, blood spraying, but it gets old pretty fast. Combat is shallow. You have light and heavy attacks, a dodge roll, a rage meter, but it never evolves meaningfully. There's no real combo meter or satisfying progression system, and every encounter starts to feel the same. The enemies rarely change tactics, and it becomes a cycle of sneak around, get spotted, go beast mode, clean the house, repeat. The combat really lacks having that potential where you could have multiple abilities. You really have a couple of them that you can spin around and unlock until the very end, but it doesn't really feel like you can do very much. And the combat being such short-sighted, oftentimes you get to clear out the house faster than you actually manage to use everything. And the stealth, it's passable at best. There's basic cover mechanics, security cameras to avoid, guards to sneak up to, but it's clunky. There's no real tension because the penalty of falling stealth is just, okay, now just murder everyone, which, let's face it, is the more fun option anyway. Not to mention, the stealth itself is not really that well flushed out. You get spotted very easily, and oftentimes even if you don't want to, you fail somehow because you can't get through by sneaking around, and you get caught up, and I guess you have to fight and have no other option. Visually, the game is pretty dated. Initially, I played it on the Steam Deck and it looked great, but as I put it on the big screen, I realized that I was wrong. Environments are sterile and overly clean. Lighting is flat, character animations are stiff, and facial expression, however, somewhere in the uncanny valley. It feels more like a late Xbox 360 game than a 2021 release. And the sound design also pretty forgettable. The werewolf roars and shredding guitar riffs during combat get the job done. Nothing about it sticks with you. Now, the World of Darkness setting is known for being deep and full of nuance. Political drama between factions, mystical traditions, and moral ambiguity. and that kind is present here. There's talk of spirits, Gaia, the worm, and the corrupt, but it's all surface level. The game tells you what these things are, but rarely gives them the space to breathe or matter. You're not making big ethical decisions or navigating alliances. You're just running through from one objective to the other, from marker to marker, just to get things done. Obviously, you have a little bit of story in between there, but it's really forgettable, and they could really have done a better job in that aspect. And that's where Earthblood suffers most: wasted potential. There's a really compelling idea here. The concept of balancing your humanity, your wolf nature, and your inner rage as a werewolf trying to fight corrupted evil in a dying world. That could have been incredible. But the execution feels rushed, undercooked, and trapped in a design philosophy from 2 generations ago. It's a mid-budget game trying to punch above its weight, and I respect that, but it's trying to do too much with too little, and it doesn't fully succeed at anything. That said, I don't regret playing this game. It was short, and if you're going for the campaign, 7 to 9 hours is more than enough, and it doesn't overstay its welcome. And it scratches a very specific itch, being a beast tearing through corporate goons with metal music plays. And hey, if you're into the world of darkness and want to see what a werewolf game could look like, it might be worth a curiosity play. Just keep your expectations in check. If you're a fan of werewolf games, this will be probably the best werewolf game you've ever played so far, until maybe the sequel comes out or anything like that. I really tried to like this game. I honestly did think that the characters were really cool, but the presentation and everything like that, I am so disappointed that this game didn't land it for me, and for other people as well, because this isn't a triumphant howl into the night. It's more of a frustrated growl into the half-empty forest.
So in the middle of clearing out some new games, Vasharal decided to return to his old favorite, Archons. Why? Because the devs personally reached out to him to let him know there was a new content, achievements, and update to the game. And he appreciated that kind of communication. It always feels good when developers stay connected with their players, especially for smaller titles like this. Now, he originally played Archons a while back, but this time he made a comeback in the game with the best co-op partner. Of course, who else? It's me, Armea. We tackled the updated content together, and let me tell you, it was just as wild and fun as I remembered, and he remembered, maybe even more so with the improvements they made. The big addition that got us hooked was Endless Mode, which now comes with some brutal achievements. One of the toughest challenges was surviving 20 minutes in that mode, and it gets chaotic so fast. Waves of enemies come at you like a bullet hell fever dream, and you are constantly juggling abilities, dashing, shielding, reviving. It's controlled chaos at its finest. We must have wiped half a dozen times before finally getting it right, but that moment when we did hit the 20-minute mark, pure dopamine. One of those stand up from the chair and high five kind of win. What made it even better is how much the co-op shines in this game. Archons already had solid win stick shooter mechanic, but now with the added polish and balance tweaks, everything just feels tighter. Characters are more responsive, power-up feel meaningful, and the new enemy patterns keep you on your toes. And doing it all with a partner, communicating in real time, yelling when someone goes down, pulling off clutch revives, it's just a blast. The kind of local online co-op experience that reminds you why this game's so fun in the first place. This wasn't a huge time investment, maybe a few sessions over the course of a week, but it was exactly what I needed. Short, sharp bursts of intense gameplay, some laughter, some frustration, and that awesome moment of, okay, one more run, turning into 4 more runs, or sometimes even more than that. So yeah, shout out to the devs for the email heads up and for continuing to support the game. It is a great feeling to return to a game and find it even better than you left it. And if you're looking for something fun to play with a friend or with your wife, girlfriend or boyfriend, especially if you are into action-heavy indie games, give Archons a look. It earned its place on my glad we came back to this list.
Yes, before I forget, there was one more game I squeezed squeezed in those past few months. Journey in the Savage Planet. I actually played this one with a member of our Teleplay community, Adi, and I've got to say, it was quite the experience. We decided to go bold right in from the start. Well, he did need help with the achievements for the multiplayer, and I was glad to help out with that. So we went in boldly in the hardest difficulty, which, yeah, sounds kinda reckless, but we made the whole film more intense and a bit chaotic in the best way possible. We managed to beat the story in around 5 hours, which felt surprisingly fast, but still satisfying. I have to admit, during our first playthrough, Adi was kinda leading the way. It really felt a bit confusing at times. I didn't fully grasp the world layout or whatever we were supposed to head on next. But you know what? I didn't mind it a single bit, because in the end, it wasn't just about the game itself, it was about the company. Bonding with Adi, sharing laughs, moments of, wait, what are we supposed to do here? That was the real highlight. The game's quirky humor and vibrant world only added to the vibe. I've gotta add more about this game because I haven't just stopped there. I did continue to play the co-op session earlier this month. In fact, we went on to play the game 3 times together. Once on the hardest difficulty, another on a normal, and finally a speedrun session where we completed the entire game in just under 2.5 hours. The game's speedrun requirements is actually 4 hours, so we absolutely crushed it. Thanks to all the co-op time, we managed to hit about 98% completion, nearly squeezing every drop out of the game. The only thing that left me now is the last achievement, completing the entire game solo on the hardest difficulty, which shouldn't be that hard, I think. That's going to be a bit of a grind because if I'm honest, after multiple playthroughs, the game definitely loses a bit the initial charm. The quirky humor and novelty wear thin when you've seen the same jokes, bosses, and biomes multiple times over. Luckily, I did not pay attention to all of that, so I get to pay more attention to the story this time around and really get to absorb more the dialogues. And to be honest, I'm starting to really enjoy the game and see it for what Adi kept praising it for. Still, what really sticks with you after so many runs is the map layout, the boss patterns, and that nice feeling of actually knowing what you're actually doing. And let's be honest, I had no idea what I was doing for the first 2 playthroughs. I was just following the boss. It goes from stumbling around confused to being confident and methodical, and that's a satisfying shift. I absolutely have to thank Adi for all his patience, help, and guidance. I originally only wanted to jump and help him out with the achievements, but instead what he did, he jumped to help me pretty much all the game, which I'm forever grateful because this helped me knock out another game from my backlog. That kind of commitment just made the whole experience better. So shout out to you, Adi. You're the real MVP in this adventure. Last on the list is Wartales, a game I've only just started scratching the surface of, but one that already had its claws in me. I'm still firmly in the early stages, having just completed the first region of the map, but even at this point, I can already tell this game is going to be a slow burning obsession. If you're unfamiliar, Wartales is a turn-based, open-world, tactical RPG where you manage a mercenary company surviving in a gritty, low-fantasy world full of disease, poverty, and political instability. There's no chosen one, no prophecies, just hardened fighters trying to make a living in a hostile land. Even in these opening hours, I've been impressed by the game's tone and depth. The game's world feels grounded and lived in. Every encounter is about survival, not heroism. Every contract is a chance to earn coin, also to bleed. You're constantly managing your party morale, food, wages, injuries, and gear, and that's before you even get into combat. Speaking of which, the tactical battles are tough. Positioning matters, backstabbing hit hard, and friendly fire is very real. It's the kind of system where every basic bandit can wreck your squad if you're not thinking several moves ahead. The game doesn't hold your hand, and I love that for it. But what really caught me early on is on how much personality my ragtag group already has. Not through cutscenes or dialogue trees, but through their actions, their traits, their injuries, the little emergent stories that happen when one of those lands a clutch blow or collapse from exhaustion after a long march. And most of them happen in the camp, which is very, very interesting. You get to get really close to this weird, unnamed mercenaries. You can really name them and you can do a little bit of customization, but really, they're really not that unique. Still, they carry on their stories and it's very interesting. I'm still figuring out things. How to properly camp, how to manage professions, how to avoid wasting all my gold on repairing armor. But that's the appeal. It's the kind of game that rewards learning by doing. And I'm already itching to explore the next zone and see what hardship and surprises await. This is clearly going to be a long-term game for me. It's not something you rush through, it's something you live in. A slow grind where progress feels hard-earned and the world doesn't care if you succeed or not. So not a full review here, just a snapshot of an early impression. But if you like tactical RPGs with a deep system, a break atmosphere and zero handholding, Wartales might be your next big time sink. I'll probably talk more about this in the future videos once I put 30, 40, maybe even 100 hours that these beasts deserve. Looking back at the last couple of months with everything going on, especially adjusting to life as a new father, this batch of games has been strangely grounding. They weren't just titles I knocked off a list, each one in its own way reflecting something about how I game now, with more intention, more purpose, and more awareness of the time I have to spend. Trine 3 and 4 reminded me of the value of consistency and finishing what you start. Even when a series stumbles like Trine 3 did, there's something satisfying about seeing it through and witnessing how the developers bounce back. Trine 4 felt like a reward for pushing through disappointment, and that's a theme that applies well beyond gaming, into real life, into parenting, into any creative pursuit. Resident Evil Reverse and Archons, and as well Journey to the Savage Planet, brought out the social side of gaming, how important it is to have those people to share those memories with. Whether it's clearing achievements before Shutdown or diving into a chaotic co-op with someone you care about, those shared memories hit harder than any cutscenes ever could. And it really hammered home that not every game needs to be deep or perfect to be meaningful. It just needs to connect you to a moment or to someone else. Dear Esther and Estranged were on the shorter side, but they reminded me of the beauty of compact experiences. You don't need 80 hours to feel something. Sometimes an evening walk through a strange, moody landscape is enough to leave an impact. And they serve as a great reminder that our backlogs don't have to be these monolithic tasks. We can pick up a short game, finish it in one sitting, and walk away satisfied. Werewolf the Apocalypse, Earthwood, that one taught me that not every game needs to be a masterpiece to have value. Even if it's janky, even if it's flawed, it can still scratch that itch or give you something worth talking about. And honestly, that's part of managing a backlog. You will run into games that don't really meet your expectations, and that's okay. Not every experience needs to be life-changing. Sometimes it's just about exploring, trying things, and learning what doesn't work for you. And Wartales, well, that's one shaping up to be a long journey. It reminds me that it is okay to go slow, to take your time. Not every game needs to be rushed or completed immediately. Some games, like some seasons in life, are meant to be lived in, not sprinted through. So if there's one lesson here for me and maybe for you too, that is play with purpose, make time when you can, but don't force it. Value the experience, not just the completion, and when you do finish something, celebrate it no matter how small. Because in this phase of life where time feels like it slips through your fingers faster than ever, making even a little progress on something you love, well, that's a win. And that's what it's all about. So yeah, 8 games in about 2 months, each one with different tone, different lessons, and different kind of satisfaction. It wasn't a perfect strike. It wasn't efficient, but it was real. It was fun, and it reminded me why I still care about this hobby even when life gets crazy. If you're someone with a growing backlog, limited time, a little bit of guilt hovering over your Steam library, just know you're not alone. Play what you can. Play what excites you. Don't wait for the perfect window. Sometimes you just need to pick up one game and start. And if you made it this far to the video, first off, thank you, and I really appreciate the time that you have spent. I hope that you enjoyed a little bit of Ormea, because it has been a while since she popped out. This has been a long video, and I did not expect that I'll be talking in such a long time. So if you had that patience to go through all the video, I honestly appreciate it. And I hope you found something useful, or maybe even a little bit of inspiration to return to a forgotten game or finish something you've been putting off. If you enjoyed this kind of backlog, breakdowns, and personal reflections, hit that like button. It helps the video more than you actually think. And if you want to stick around for more backlog journeys, discussions, and community challenges, consider subscribing. I've got a lot more to share. And if you finished anything cool recently, or if you started something fresh, drop it in the comments. I'd love to hear about it. Until next time, my name is Wartales, and as always, stay safe, have fun, and happy gaming.